Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So recently we've had a snowstorm and we've also had two named storms, and the winds on the storms have been absolutely atrocious, so the garden has got absolutely battered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you out into the garden today, show you around, let you see what state it's in, and I'll also show you what happened throughout the wintry storm as well. Let's get straight into it. A couple of weeks back, Manchester got hit by a snowstorm. There's something about snow that just makes everything so magical. But this is my first time having a balcony pond during winter. Normally I'm quite well protected from frost, but turns out my pond isn't, and the surface froze over. In order to save the fish, I poured boiling water into a bowl and held it over the surface of the pond. After 5 to 10 minutes or so, the ice slowly began to melt. I couldn't risk any large chunks of ice injuring the fish, so I sifted through and removed what I could. Interestingly, I was able to slide the grass out of the ice. It didn't work every time, but I managed to save the majority of the plant. All the fish were accounted for, and although I was anxious, I don't think they cared at all. They were under the ice for about 3 days or so, but hadn't been fed for about 5 days. So I gave them a little feed, but they weren't interested in the food at all. And that's because in wintry cold conditions, fish's bodies slow down and they go into a state of almost hibernation. They can go for days, if not weeks, without eating. I'll never get tired of this view. A few days later, we got hit by the very first storm, Storm Arwen. The winds reached speeds of up to 69 miles per hour and were so strong that I couldn't even open the balcony door. It was swiftly followed by a second storm with similar winds. The winds have died down a bit now, so let me take you out into the garden and show you what it looks like now. This is my first time going out, and already you can see a few of the pots have been upended. Damn, it's a little bit worse than what I thought. My herb tower, most of its contents are gone. So the begonias have all gone. I'm pretty sure though if I dig them up I can probably rescue them for next year. Petunias, pretty much the same, to be honest. I've learned to group everything together on a windy day, and for the most part things were protected. My favourite salvia, the white one, is gone, but I'm pretty sure if I cut it back it'll be fine. Both pots of lupins have done very well. In fact, they're both pushing out new growth. Unbelievable. The grass on the balcony pond has been completely bent out of shape, but it's still alive. I have to keep this container in there just in case the pond freezes over again. That way I've still got a little bit of an air hole for the fish. These were my nasturtiums and morning glories. This whole section is completely done and dusted. Surprisingly, all of these geraniums are fine, but I'm going to have to take them all out anyway and separate them. So that's going to be the next balcony garden job. Considering they were completely exposed to the frost without any protection from the glass, I was really shocked, but you can see the damage to the rest of the garden. The bee house came down, and the Malabar spinach is completely gone. So the problem with the Malabar spinach is Malabar spinach contains so much water that it's absolutely no surprise that with the -5 temperatures it was gonna go. But interestingly, Tim is still trying to flower, still producing more and more and more flowers. Of course, the spinach that I planted is doing just fine, and right here peas, there's absolutely no movement in these peas whatsoever, but I always find that peas get transplant shock whenever I transplant them, so I'm gonna count these out for a bit. Somehow my strawberries are still going. I don't understand why they're still going, but they are. And although these are both in metal containers, they are both doing well, and this petunia is still producing flowers. So the other end of the window boxes, oops, here's another one of the window boxes, and yes, everything here is on its last legs. I'm pretty confident though, if I dig these up, oh, where's this come from? So there's a nasturtium there, didn't I? That's reseeded itself. But yeah, everything here, I think I can pretty much save. This is a salvia here, and it's producing new growth down the bottom, so I'm confident that everything can be saved. This is actually rocket that I left to go to seed, and it looks like it's still got 1 or 2 seed pods still on there. But again, it's producing vigorous growth here. These mutant tomatoes still they are going, and they are ripening. Look at this. It's amazing. Don't get me wrong though, it's not 100% great. A lot of this foliage is not looking the best. If you compare this video to my life on a windy balcony garden video, my reaction is completely different. Over the past year or so, I've just had to learn to accept what I cannot control. And one of the realities of balcony gardening is wind is probably our #1 enemy. And rather than getting upset when things don't go to plan, I've learned to accept it and move on. There's quite a lot of work to do, and my anxiety made me feel like too overwhelming and I should just leave it. So I decided to tackle things one container at a time. This was the first one. Although it has holes at the bottom, it had just taken in too much water, and you can see that a lot of the plants had withered away, but if you look closely there's still a lot of green. So I decided I would dig everything up and repot whatever I could. Some of these containers were a food source for some of the moth caterpillars, so I had to be really careful. Any plants that I could salvage, I trimmed back and potted up. I then replaced them with spinach. Last year, the spinach in these containers absolutely thrived, especially after a good frost. But in typical me fashion, I decided to sow some radish seeds as well. Radishes are awesome. In the right conditions, you can go from seed to harvest in under a month. I then gave the container a good old watering, and although they look a little bit raggedy, I'm confident that they will be flourishing. And here are some of the plants that I rehoused, all doing well. Now that I understand my garden a bit more, next year, through my pre-planning, I say planning, I know nothing will go to plan, but try incorporating some wind-tolerant varieties of plants, specifically plants that do well in coastal regions that normally have harsh wind. And I'm going to see whether or not that's going to make a difference to the productivity of some of the plants up here on the garden. Let me show you what the garden looks like now after a little bit of a tidy up, and I'll also recap and show you what some of those new containers look like. 2 weeks on from the storms, we're in the middle of December, and yet the garden is looking as green as can be. It's been a week or so, and spinach has now rooted itself properly and is producing new leaves. At a time where most ground level gardeners don't have much going on in their gardens, mine's still bursting with life. I've pruned back a lot of plants and even took care of the Malabar spinach container. Tim is still flowering in the middle of December, and not only are the tomatoes still going, they're still producing flowers. I'm going to be giving them a good pruning, show you the results of that in our next balcony tour video. A week on, and the plants rescued from the container are doing awesome. It's amazing just how quickly your gardening can recover, and even though on the surface it might not look like everything is great, but sometimes all it needs is a little bit of time, and then it will just bounce back. This is one of the lessons that I've had to learn, not only for my garden, but also for my own mental health. And remember, if your garden is in a way, just like mine was, try and take everything one step at a time. Don't set yourself too many big goals that you can't achieve. Anyway, I hope this video was useful to you in some kind of way, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. Hopefully, I'll see you again soon. Bye! I thought you might like to enjoy a sunset on the cloud garden, so here you are. Thank you guys for all of the support. Hopefully, I'll see you again soon. Bye!